Hello, the dearest friends of mine. It's my hope that you are doing fine. I am also doing fine. I remember the last times I tried to give you the highlights of today's presentation on the so-called research methodology as chapter 3 of our research, a proposal of our research. So under the chapter 3, the research methodology, I said we have a lot of section and a subsection, a lot of components and a lot of parameters that we will be discussing, looking and making it in a practical scenario such that one can understand as how do we write this section and what condition do we apply the use of the research, designing data correction, data analysis, what are those things and how do we in fact implement. So before we go detail describing the components of the research methodology as the chapter 3 of our research proposal, I found it is necessary and it's important to make a clear distinction and a clarification between the research methods and the research methodology. This is because some of us researchers, we use these two terms interchangeably. We speak of the research method while referring to the research methodology. And sometimes we speak of the research methodology while referring to the research method. As why I tried to ask the question that the research method and the research methodology are all the same. The answer is typically not. Research method and the research methodology are two different statements, two different phrases with different principle and different philosophical backgrounds, but we sometimes use them interchangeably in a wrong perspective. So I've decided to make this clear at the earlier stages such that while we will be going detail with the part and component of the research methodology, we will now have the clear picture of what is a research method and the research methodology. Sometimes we hear a lot of statements like your methodological section is not clear, either from your supervisors or the members from which you are trying to present your work. Your methodological section do not match with the objectives. Or your methodological section is not sufficient, it's not detailed. Your methodological section is not self-explanatory. And other more points. Then it's from the same kind of information. What could be knocking in your mind? If you hear of these statements, what is knocking in the mind could be automatically issues related to data correction methods. If you hear that your methodological section is not clear, what comes in the brain at first is maybe the method that I have written for data collection are not well properly structured or properly indicated. That could be the first assumption. And therefore, it's from this notion where the interchangeability of the word method and the methodology came into existence. It is the point where now a researcher cannot differentiate between the word research methodology and the research method. So to make it clear, I have decided to make it well distinguished from the beginning so that it will be in a proper follow-up when we go into a detail describing the chapter 3 of our discussion. I am taking you to this a simple box. This is a box. Within the box, it contains a lot of instruments. This is a toolbox. A toolbox within which there are several tools. We have these different kind of tools. We have the knives, we have the stars, we have the screws, we have the hammer, we have the tapes, we have the scissor rake, and more other instruments inside this box. And each instrument inside the box has a particular function to perform. There is a stud screw, there is a pointed screw, and there is a sharp end screw, and the brined sharp screw. These are called screw, and each screw have a particular function to perform pertaining to this electronics related engineering. So each of these screw inside the box have some principle behind as why should I use this particular screw rather than this one. What is the theoretical behind? What are the procedures that demanding one to use this kind of screw rather than the other? Why should I use this kind of hammer rather than this one kind of hammer? Why should I use this kind of scissor rather than this kind of scissor? So each of these instruments inside the box, they are guided by a certain principle for its usability. So we can use this a simple tools box to explain the difference between research method and the research methodology in the few slides to come. So it's from these simple tools where each of these instruments inside the tools, they are referred as the methods that are specific to a specific function. Now, methods are the tools which are used for correction of a particular data. They are specific, are special methods responsible for data correction. And then the box is standing as a research methodology that has some indicative principle behind that describes why do we select this kind of tools for performing a particular function and not this one. So a methodology, this is a study. It is a scientific study that describes the reason as why do we select a particular method, what are the principles behind the selectivity and the choice of a particular method for data correction rather than the other method, what are the procedures, what is the theoretical behind, what is the paradigms for a particular method, and what could I do to perform data correction by a use of either a questionnaire or the use of the interview, by the use of an experiment. So the theoretical behind the usability and selectivity of a particular tools or a particular method is what we call the methodology. That's why under methodology we have the term ROG. ROG means study of methods. Now, probably you're getting, you are trying to follow up. There is another example here. We are having this a syringe. The syringe where is used for injection of some drugs or chemical in the hospital. And we have the other syringe. This is MV and IV kind of syringe. And the use of MV or IV for injection of a particular drug or chemical to a patient is guided by some principles. We don't simply use IV or EV because of our interest. We use IV because of some reasons. And we use MV because of some reason. So the reason behind the use of a particular method, the theoretical behind, the principle behind, is the philosophical, is what we call the methodology. And the method, or the syringe itself, is what we call the method. Now let me take you into a specific research method and the research methodology, so that you get the clear understanding of this. Starting with term, the research methods. As I said, the research method, this is a tools which a researcher uses to correct or to acquire relevant data. While it might be an instrument that could be used to perform a particular operation for a desired goals. A method can be a stepwise procedures of which a researcher uses to come up with the point of interest, of which we call it data. So what you are trying to follow some stepwise in order to correct some data regarding your study is what we call the research methods. This research method, they cannot be changed, rather you can modify them. For instance, when we are preparing a so-called ugari. Ugari, this is a staple food in Africa which is made from corn flour and maize flour. The preparation of this kind of a dish have to follow some stages so that you reach to your targeted goals. If you don't follow those principles of the stages, automatically ugari won't be there. And research method can be categorized into two groups. We have the method which are instrumental based, that are instrumental in nature, that we use some instrument in order to get a particular data. And we have those, we call them the behavioral method, where a researcher involves him or herself direct by the use of some behavioral related parameters in order to acquire data. And the behavioral is where we find these interviews, focus group discussion as the tools for data correction. But under instrument is where we are using some instrument related activities for data analysis. Take an example for this. This is commonly for chemistry related studies, where we have this instrument. For instance, we have the instrument by the use of ISPM, the induced core mass spectrometer, which is programmed one, and it has the sample introduction chamber, where we introduce the sample to that particular chamber, and we command it, and the instrument work under some particular computer-based program command, and at the end of the day, it will display some statistical, this quantitative data on the display on the screen. That is an instrument. Or sometimes we use instrument like the flask and other lab-based instrument that will be used for data acquisition. Now, a research method is simply, we are referring to a specific method, the specific tools, a specific instrument which is used for data correction. We can see some of the examples here. I've named this research methods, and this research method can be categorized based on the approach under which you are using, as a qualitative approach or quantitative approach. This is another class that will take us in detail describing the different approach which can be used in research. The intention of today is to see the tools that can be used. Here we have different research methods, the tools that can be used for data correction. We call them research method. We have the one under participatory research tools, where we have the interview, we have the focus group discussion, we have the panel group discussion, we have the documentation study, we have the observation, we have the historical trend analysis, we have this non-participatory tools where a researcher can just prepare the questionnaire and send it somewhere where the respondent could be filling and then send back to a researcher and gone. It might be a representative recording and others, which is very common to ecological studies of the wildlife and others. It might be the experimental kind of research method where you have this lab-based experiment, we have the field-based experiments, we have the pre-experiment, the quasi-experiment, true experiments, we have this simulatory kind of tools, or the phototypes, which is common in computer-based command and computer engineering study, and simulatory, which is very common simulation technique, which is very common to these engineering-related studies, where we have this machinery monitoring methods, and we have instrumental-based studies, such as PCR, photometric, and other related methods. We will discuss it detailed when we go for the point where we'll be discussing on the research methods as a subtopic within our research methods. What about how can we in fact explain it in a way that one can understand and come up with a clear difference between research method and the research methodology? Now, taking an example of the term biology, where we have biology, we said biology from the lower classes, there has got two terms, bios and the logos, where bio is here and logos is here. So bios, life, logos, study. So it's the study of life. When we go to ontology, onto means reality. So the study of reality. Anthropology, there is log. Anthro study of human life, human culture, human life, human interaction. So is anthropology. Cytology, there is log here, the study of cell. Histology, the study of tissue. So there is a term log in every discipline. So the word log means study of. So if that's the case, we have then the methodology. There is a term also log here. So methodology simply is the study of methods. How do we study methods? So if we speak of the method, for example, we speak of the questionnaire. The use of questionnaire, it's not that it came from the vacuum. Questionnaire, it was constructed by some scholars, and then the constructivity of the use of questionnaire had some philosophical behind, has some principle behind, there are some assumption behind, there were some theoretical behind, there are some paradigm behind that were underpinning the setups and the procedures regarding the particular methods. So when we speak of the questionnaire, there are some philosophical behind, principle behind, theoretical behind, underpinning that particular study. When we speak of the interview, when we speak of the focus group discussion, when we speak up on any kind of method or the tools that is used for data correction, we should understand that there are some philosophical principles and assumptions particularly on that method that has to be with its why do we make a choice of that particular method as a tools for a data correction. So the study of that particular method pertaining to the philosophical behind, the principle behind, and the assumption as to why have I decided to use that particular method as a tools for data correction is what we call a methodology. So a methodology is simply a study about a particular method pertaining to its designing. How do we design that particular method? How do we link it into a data analysis? And what are the procedures that could be undertaken? And what are the techniques inside that particular method which a researcher should follow, so that at the end of the day, he come up with the best outcome, which will provide data that are relevant and valid for his study. So such kind of information that describing the scenarios pertaining to the designing, the methodology and technique of that particular method as to why one should consider and follow those particular principles is what we call the research methodology. So research methodology is the father, or it is the mother within which a method is a subsection of the research methodology. The research methodology has some more components. One of the components is the research methods. So let us not mix and use these two terms interchangeably. We can use it interchangeably, but with the assumption that we know what does the principle behind the two terms. From this simple description, it's my hope that you can now pick and tell exactly is what is the difference between research method and the research methodology. I expect no more contradictions on that particular area. And then we will be running on the same track while describing other sections within the chapter 3, which is the research methodology, as we are to describe one component of the research methodology in a detail with a critical examples, such that you can manipulate and make it in a practical with no problems. I request you to subscribe my YouTube, share my information as knowledge is power, make some comments, leave me a lot of comments, ask me a lot of questions. Please, you can contact me in whatever the ways regarding on a particular issues. And I also make more a request that you turn on your notifications once you have subscribed on my YouTube, such that wherever I upload on the next series of the chapter 3, you will be the first to be notified and make follow-ups and learn. Knowledge is power, and this is the point for us to clarify some of the research concepts and techniques that sometimes bring about some contradictions among us. Over these few minutes that I've spent for you, I say thanks for your sharing, subscriptions, commenting, and listening to my presentation. I once again say thank you for you.